Welcome into Instant Reaction in Indianapolis Colts podcast, and we are reacting to a tough 18-16 road loss for the Indianapolis Colts as they fall to the Seattle Seahawks, and they now fall to 8-6 on the season. I am Casey Vallier, joined as always by Colts Ring of Honor wide receiver Bill Brooks. And Bill, man, in the NFL, there are no moral victories. Nobody cares for you regardless of the outcome. They're not going to feel sorry for you. But man, this is a tough one. When you think about all of the circumstances that went into this game and how well I think the Colts really played for an entire 60-minute ball game, this one's a tough one to swallow.
Yeah, it's hard to swallow when you're going into a game knowing how good this team that you're playing, how they have played and the things they have done up to this point in the season, and you go in there into a hostile environment, and for the first half offensively, you control the time of possession, you move the ball up and down the field, and the defense does its job of holding them to field goals and not scoring any points, and then you still come up short. That's tough and it hurts.
No, absolutely. And like I said, I mean, there are no moral victories and nobody's going to feel sorry for you, but that is a tough one. And therefore, it's a Colts loss, but there are a lot of areas that I really wanted to highlight today because I feel like for the most part, it was a pretty positive game. The outcome wasn't where you wanted it to be, but there was a lot of positives, and it's only fitting to kind of start where the conversation has kind of been all week, and that is Philip Rivers getting his first start in the NFL since retiring 5 years ago. And I thought he had good command of the offense. Now, this is an offense he knows very, very well. Him and Shane Steichen, they are essentially like two guys with the same brain. So there was never a question of how well he would pick up this offense after, not playing in the NFL for 5 years. But he completes 66% of his passes. Now, I know it's only 120 passing yards. Did have a touchdown and that interception at the end when you're trying to push the ball down the field to try to get in field goal range. So I knew that maybe coming into it, it wasn't going to be like an overwhelming stat line. But regardless of that, I thought he had really good offensive rhythm, especially early. But throughout, I thought he had good command of the offense.
Yeah, I thought he had good command of the offense, definitely putting him in the right plays when needed to be and executing the plays that were called and getting the ball out fairly quickly. He did take a couple of hits, and I wanted to see how he responded after those hits, and he got back up and just like the Philip Rivers I remember from old, just got back up and just wanted to compete and just go back at it. And I think in his post game press conference, he said that he kind of missed that getting hit and getting back up and getting involved in the offense, and it kind of made him feel pretty good. And that was a little different for me to hear that because I don't like getting hit at all. So, but
Right.
he enjoyed that, and for him to get out there and play and do it after being out of the game for 5 years, I thought he did a pretty good job getting the ball out. I think there was one play with Josh Downs that they had a little miscommunication. I think he got the ball up a little bit early, and
Right.
Josh wasn't expecting the ball come up that early. So that's something they'll work on, and have more time to prepare for things like that, and hopefully they can get that worked out. But he did some nice things, getting the ball out, got the ball to some different people, and typical like in this offense, you use all your weapons, and I thought he uses all of his weapons, getting the ball to JT a couple of times, to Abdullah, and then to Pitt, and players like that, Tyler Warren. So I thought he did a pretty good job spreading the ball around and getting it out when he could.
No, absolutely. And I think we're going to highlight a majority of those players that you just mentioned. But before we talk about the offensive skill position players, I want to really tip my cap to the offensive line because they go into this game with no Braden Smith. He's placed on IR, so they will not have their starting right tackle for the rest of the season. So that means rookie Jalen Travis slides in at right tackle. I thought he played pretty well today. And then also you lose Bernard Ryman right before halftime. So Luke Tenuta, who hadn't taken a snap all year, he gets elevated in there at left tackle. And you look at the final stat line against a defense who had gotten a lot of pressure all year, one of the top teams at getting sacks. They had just one sack, which came on a bad snap where
Bad
Rivers
snap.
gave himself up, and then four total quarterback hits. So, yes, there was some pressure, and yes, he took some hits, but for the most part, against a Seattle defense that had seemingly got home almost every game that they've wanted to, they weren't able to do that in this game against the Colts, which, when you're down both your tackles, that's a pretty impressive feat.
Yeah, when both your tackles go out and you go out there and you play against one of the, best teams in the National Football League, a very good defense, and you're playing in a hostile environment that was
Yeah.
probably might have been the loudest stadium in the NFL. Doing a pretty good job when you only give up one sack, and that sack was really due to the snap, and he had to give himself up. But yes, he did get hit a couple of times, but I thought they did a nice job. And then, of course, helping to open up some holes for Jonathan Taylor. No, Jonathan Taylor's average wasn't that great, 3.5, but you get 87 yards and 25 carries. I thought he did a good job of toting the rock, getting some yards, getting some tough yardage there, and as well as Abdullah, not a lot of carries, not a lot of yards, but he got the ball some and did some special things out there for the team to give JT a little blow there, so that was good to see. So the offensive line did a nice job. I thought they did a real nice job against a good Seattle defense.
No, absolutely. That brings up to the point that I really want to talk about and highlight both of those running backs for the Colts today. Jonathan Taylor, you talked about it, 87 yards on 25 carries. So when you look at it, just 3.5 yards per clip. But I think everybody in the stadium knew that he was going to get the ball a lot. They stacked the box, and he was still, I felt like, able to kind of put his footprint on the game, if you will. He also had 3 receptions for 14 yards. So yet again, another game where he goes over 100 scrimmage yards. And yes, the outcome, really he didn't have any of those big breakaway runs, wasn't able to get into the end zone. But I thought that he, really put his footprint on the game. But then also you mentioned Amir Abdullah. And, he had 4 carries for 15 yards, not a massive number. But the thing
No.
that he did do well, he led the team with 5 catches for 32 yards. And then from a kick return standpoint, he yet again had another long return, a long of 44. So I thought when you combine what both of those guys did in all the aspects of the game, I thought the two running backs really made their mark in this game against Seattle.
Yes, I did. You talk about Abdullah, what he did, and as far as in the catching the ball and running the ball and the special teams. He had over 100 total yards. So that was something special that he's always been good at in regards to getting those tough yards, getting yards, playing well, being that veteran that has leadership out there, going out there and doing the right thing. So as someone you can count on, you can depend on going out there in the football field and look to that, hey, you know what? He's going to do the right things. He's going to make the play. So it's good to see Abdullah doing that and having some big plays out there. But I thought the running backs did a nice job, and that's what you want to see. You want to see running backs do a nice job, especially knowing that you have a quarterback coming in, knowing that you want to try to run the ball, you want to try to eat up some of that clock, you want to have long drives. So, the Seattle offense couldn't get the ball and drive down the field, wear out the Seattle defense by going down there and having some long drives and trying to score points, of course, and trying to get into the end zone. So I thought, it did a nice job of mixing it up, running the ball with Abdullah and JT, but also throwing the ball a little bit as well.
Now, flipping over the defensive side of the ball, you think about this Seahawks team. They were averaging nearly 30 points per game, and they're held to 18 points, but not just 18 points, it's 6 field goals, not
Yes.
allowing a touchdown in a game where typically you look at the end of the outcome and you don't allow a touchdown, you're more than likely going to be in every single game that you do. Clearly, that was the case in Seattle. Seattle was just 2 for 13 on third down. They did have one fourth down complete conversion. So I guess if you want to put it third and fourth down, they were 3 of 14. But that is still winning football as well. And one more thing that was pretty impressive, Seattle is one of the better running teams in all of football. They run the football more than almost any other team in the NFL, and the Colts held them to just 50 total rushing yards. Charbonnet led them with 31, but their main running back in Kenneth Walker, he had 9 carries for 17 yards. That is 1.9 yards per carry for one of those young up and coming running backs in football. They held him at check, and they did that without DeForest Buckner up
Buckner.
front. You talk about typically when you're looking at the run defense for this Colts defense without DeForest Buckner, those numbers have been a lot higher than what you're seeing that they did in Seattle, which when you think about what happened on the injury report this week with DeForest Buckner practicing, he's got that window open to return from IR, yet you see this run defense outpour. I thought that was very, very impressive for what this Colts defense was able to do against a team that is not afraid to run the ball and run the ball often. They weren't able to get anything going on the ground in Seattle.
Yeah, they didn't get anything going. Give the defensive line some credit there. You had guys out there playing well. Of course, you have Gallimore and Grover out there. Those guys doing a nice job. And Tommy Adebayo, I thought he played pretty well today as well. And he did some nice things and gave you some great effort. Of course, out there, his name's not in the stat sheet, but there were a couple plays he made there to help
Right.
spill the play to someone else to make a tackle. So those are the things you like to see out there in the football field. So give that defensive line credit without having Buck out there. And you know what? I'm sure they're looking forward to getting Buck back and Buck getting back there that can
Right.
help them even more in the run game and just also getting some pressure on the quarterback as well. So I thought the defensive line did a nice job. And let's not forget about the linebackers. I thought Pratt played pretty
Yes.
well, doing some nice things out there. And Zaire was all over the field as well. So give that front four some credit, and you also give the linebackers some credit for what they did, and definitely holding those guys to only 50 yards rushing. That's pretty impressive.
Now, the one negative we're going to talk about here is you look at the skill position players for the Seahawks. Jackson Smith and Jigba, the best receiver in football right now. He's leading the NFL, and he had another big game today. 113 yards receiving, and then also Rashid Shaheed, he added 74 yards receiving. So two of their top weapons were able to get going. We mentioned the run defense, but there in the passing game, we did see some leakage a little bit, but it's all relative when you think about it with no Sauce Gardner and Charvarius Ward has now been placed on IR. So it's another next man up kind of mentality in that secondary. But that is one area that you look at when you look moving forward in order to get the way, when you think about a game that comes down to the wire like this, it's a couple of those plays to their top players like Jackson Smith and Jigba and Rashid Shaheed. You're going to have to be able to shut them down moving forward because that might have been the reason and the difference that this game ended the way it did in Seattle.
Yeah, you're gonna have to find ways to shut the usually the number one guy for the opponent's offense um, down to hopefully not make so many big explosive plays. And you know what? You have Njigba makes some couple of big plays. You have Shaheed makes big play. You know these guys can make those plays. And when you know those guys can make those plays, you really, really have to kind of limit them to make those big explosive plays because that gives them not only momentum, but it moves the ball down the field. It gives them the big chunk yards and, puts a little bit more pressure on the defense. So you're going to have to finding ways to kind of limit those guys from making those big plays. You're not going to completely stop those guys because those guys are good. I
Right.
mean, just give them credit. They're not in the NFL for nothing. They're in there and they make big plays. And Jigba is leading the league in yardage for wide receivers for catching the ball, reception. So he is good. And Shaheed is just one of those guys that makes big plays. I mean, he played against the Colts I don't know, a few years ago and made some big plays when he
Yeah,
was
when
with
he
the
was in New
Saints.
Orleans.
So,
Yeah,
yep. So, very good, talented players that are going to make plays, but you just have to limit those guys because if you can limit those guys making the big plays, it puts more pressure on the offense to find someone else to make big plays. And if those guys can't make the big plays, then it's really going to limit those offense when you shut down their big play guys.
absolutely. Well, final thing I want to mention here, Bill, and I do apologize for waiting until right now, but we have to, really give some praise to Blake Grupe. You know what the last week and a half has been. You start your career with somebody, you get released, you're added to a new team, you got to learn the new snapper, new holder, all of those things that come into play. Last week he was flawless. He continues that up in Seattle. He goes a perfect 3 for 3, including a 64-yarder, and then what was a go-ahead 60-yard field goal with just 47 seconds left on the clock. It's the longest field goal made in franchise history. And really, man, I wish we're talking about that being the game
Yes.
winner, Bill, because I know inside the studio where we're watching, it was electric. I can only
Yes.
imagine what it was like for Matt and Charles, how electric it was on the call. That was incredible. And for the moment, for it not to be too big, and ultimately, I mean, he made that with a couple of yards to spare.
Yes.
That could have been good from 64, 65.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to hear the call. It was electric, like you said, by Matt making that call, hearing it and looking at it and seeing that the ball went through. And as you said, Case, he could have probably made it from 63, 64
Right?
yards because he got all of that
He
one. And it
did.
looked like he did it with ease. And it was good to see. And, you thought maybe, okay, here it is. Coach just tighten up on that defense. Don't let them get in field goal range. we got this one, and it would be a nice story.
Yeah,
Philip coming back, of course, and having played in 5 years and lead the team down to get the winning field goal. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. But give Grupe credit. I mean, he hit a couple of long field goals for the Colts, and that's what you want. You want a kicker that can make those kind of kicks, and give credit to the whole, snapper, the holder, Rhodes, and Rigo to get the ball down, get the ball back, and get the ball down, and Grupe just put it through the upright. So nice to see. Give Grupe a lot of credit, and you know what? He was calm and he didn't flinch at all during the pressure, and that's what you want to
right.
see. You want to see kickers that can make those type of kicks in pressure moments, and he did that. He made that kick during the pressure time in the game and end of the game, and so give the young man credit for doing that. And it was good to see because he did his part, and just need to just hold that Seahawks back a little bit so they couldn't go down and kick a field goal, but unfortunately they did. But my hat's off to Grupe for what he did and accomplished today.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it from a Seattle perspective, they score 18 points on 6 field goals, and it took a 56-yard field goal by Jason Myers, with 20 some odd seconds left to kind of close everything out. So, you know, it was electric, and you tip the cap to both of these kickers because down the stretch they were able to do some things that I don't know that we weren't talking about this a couple weeks ago because we didn't think that we had the opportunity to have a 60-yard field goal in that special teams unit. But clearly, Blake Grupe's got quite a leg there because a 60-yard field goal is nothing to shrug off. But at the end of the day, it is a loss for the Colts. It's a tough one, but there is a bright side. It's an NFC loss. So when you look at it from the playoff perspective and everything, AFC record always going to be important. Same with the division record. Now, when you look at the division, both the Jaguars and Texans, they got wins today. So in the division, it's still going to be a tough hill to climb for the Colts, but they do have the Jags and the Texans remaining on the schedule. So it's going to be tight. These last 3 games are very, very important for the Colts, especially coming off this tough loss in Seattle, 18-16. But, Bill, I always appreciate you joining me. It was a tough one. I wish we were talking about a victory, but I always look forward to these chats after these games.
Yes, I always look forward to it, Casey. It's good going over the game and rehashing the game and going back over them. But I want to talk about one where we win, okay? Because the last couple of times we've been talking, we haven't won the football game. So we need to
Yeah.
turn that around, and hopefully the Colts can turn that around and come back. And they're playing against San Francisco at home. We can get a win for the home team and go from there.
Absolutely. That's what we're hoping for. It's a big game, this next one, because it's the next game, if you
Yep.
will, but it's prime time. It's
Yep.
Monday Night
Monday
Football.
Night
It's
Football.
at home, and the Colts get to wear their Indiana Knights jerseys. That's all fun. We love all of that. I can't wait to see
Players love it
Lucas
too.
Oil on prime time on a Monday night game. I'm looking forward to that one for sure, and that comes up a week from Monday. So we're looking forward to that. Now the 49ers, cannot overlook them at all. They are 10-4, another victory this Sunday against the Titans. So now there are 3 teams in the NFC West with 10 victories. You talk about
Wow.
the Niners, you talk about the Rams, you talk about the Seahawks. The Colts have lost to the Rams and Seahawks. Let's hope the Colts can maybe get the better end of the San Francisco 49ers the next time out. But it'll be the 10-4 Niners coming to Indianapolis to take on the 8-6 Colts from Lucas Oil Stadium on Monday Night Football. But for Bill Brooks, I'm Casey Vallier signing off here on Instant Reaction following the Colts' tough loss 18-16 to the Seahawks in Seattle. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.